The reason we're here is because today's topic of how to sell and buy digital services is something that a lot of us are challenged with, and we're here to share our experiences with each other, specifically our illustrious panel, and with you, and to really have a great dialogue about what are the things that we want to establish in the LA community as best practices. It's really to share with LA and to push digital forward. And I had a really great conversation last night at a Digital LA event with Kevin, if you guys know who he is, who does Digital LA. And this is one of the things that came up was, how do you gather and educate the disparate LA communities, from entertainment to development to creative to design? You know, it's a really spread out.
So we're going to be looking at it from the perspective of an agency. Yes. We're going to be looking at it from the perspective of a developer, and we're going to be looking at it to a certain degree from the perspective of the client.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to the panel. The panel actually represents the diversity of resources that you can use here in LA to build a digital product. So with that, let's have the panelists introduce themselves very shortly, who you are, what you do, and what is your interest from sharing this morning with our audience?
Hi everyone, I'm Christian Byrne. I work for Oshyn, and we don't need to clap about that. I run the services team at Oshyn, making sure that projects get, first of all, sold and then get delivered on time and at the right quality level for the customer. My interest in being here is trying to further the conversation about how customers should buy services, digital services from companies like us, and how we as digital companies should try to position our services and best educate the customer on what they need to do to complete successful projects.
Awesome, thank you so much. Elias.
Good morning, everybody. Elias Slater. I work at Stauffer. We're a small open source development firm. I do project management there, and mainly here to help educate everybody on how to work with digital. It's a learning curve.
And you're also a recovering entertainment executive.
Yeah, I did about 9 years at the studios, 7 at Fox, 2 at CBS.
So you bring a very unique point of view into digital projects.
Yeah, I've been on both sides.
Awesome.
Been through the ringer.
Awesome. So ask him questions from that point of view.
Cool.
Heather.
Hi there. I'm Heather Taskovich. I'm a program director with Huge here in LA. So we're a full-service digital agency, and I'll bring a perspective today in terms of how we look at projects, scope them, estimate them, sell them, and then deliver them.
Thank you, Heather.
Right. And I'm Scott Carruth. I'm a founder at Philosophy. We've been building digital products for a variety of different clients across industries for about 5 years. Not only do we work directly with clients, but we often partner with larger agencies like Huge and some creative agencies in order to help them design and build their products.
There was a lot of props for you at the event last night from a few of the people.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have been there.
I love Scott. And his dog Spot. So let's get started with the next thing. We can ask the panel a question, but I want to know what some of you are here for. And I do, because some of you told us in the registration form, but I see some of you who have agencies or who have practices here in LA, and I'm curious why you're here.
My name is Orlando Sanabria, and I'm from a young studio called Bowl Collective. It's my partner, Nick Toga, here. Primarily, we're here to learn more about how to purchase, I guess, the sales process of the projects. And obviously, we're interested in getting more projects as well. Yep.
So, young studio, interested in getting more projects. How about you guys over here, young ladies over here? Nicole, why are you here?
Wow, you have a great memory. I'm a freelance visual and UX designer, and I mainly work with agencies. And I'm a lot of times out of the loop on this whole process. And so I wanted to find out more about it so that I can hopefully contribute to projects more in the future.
So you want to be able to do a good job on the projects that you're contributing to?
I would just like to know as much as possible about a project.
So let's start with your question. Heather, can you give us an overview of the sales process at Huge? What happens before you get a project? Just walk us through the steps.
Sure. So we'll get an inquiry from either an existing client or a brand new client, and they'll provide us with some kind of a project brief, what they're looking to do, what they're trying to achieve. and we'll take that back and look at it. It may be really fleshed out what they want, in which case we can kind of jump right into more of an estimation phase. Otherwise, if it's more of a generalized goal they're trying to achieve, we'll gather a team together, a cross-functional team, to talk about what's the best way to address this problem and what does the solution look like. Once we've got that figured out, we'll get that cross-functional team together. So we'll look at getting people from project management, account management, and then our different disciplines like strategy, research, UX, visual design, technology, whoever it needs to be involved in this project, and start to break things down. We really initially look at more of what we call a top-down approach. So not looking to get really granular with what each task is going to take, but more in general terms, like we think it's going to take about 6 weeks of this kind of activity, 3 weeks of this kind of activity, and get an idea of team size and duration, and then build an estimate out of that. And so that's kind of our process, in general. It varies depending on the type of project, and then often that will sort of kick off a back and forth with the client. So we'll come with an initial proposal, a plan, how we think we'd execute it, what that cost and timeline will be, and then the negotiations begin in terms of is that really what the client's looking for? Price is often a sticking point as well. So are there ways to get to a price that they're looking for? You can look at scope to get there. Sometimes schedule is a driving factor, so they need to hit a specific launch date for an event or for a product launch or whatnot. So we'll work together collaboratively with them to get to a place where it's a plan, a price, and so on that's going to work for them.
Are you as a PM responsible for putting together the team to do the proposal and the scoping on a project?
Yeah, so our project management teams will work with, we really have a person in our office dedicated to that resource management. So we'll look across our organization, and luckily we can pull not just from our LA office, but we have offices in New York and Portland and so on. So we'll look at who are the right people to help us scope this out, in addition to who's available. So the project manager will work with someone in resourcing to look at that and pull together the team.
Awesome, thank you. Elias, that's in Spanish, and Elias in English. You have an interesting philosophy of fixed fee variable scope. She talked about pricing and putting that together in a proposal. What does that mean? What does fixed fee variable scope mean?
So we're kind of trying this out, and this is,
An experiment, to use lean startup lingo.
Definitely. I mean, we've been through these projects where, you estimate and then you get burned on it because you put in way more hours than you ever thought it would be. And there's a lot of gotchas in these projects. So one thing that we've been looking into and that we're trying to instill is fixed budget variable scope. That's where the client comes to you with their budget. That's all they can spend. And then you say, great, we're going to prioritize all the tasks that need to get done to make a minimum viable product. And then from there, you see if that's going to work out, get into the agile methodology, and then work from there.
So it's almost like a prepaid phone card. You buy an amount of hours, and you get the hours that are on that card.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with some analogies. I think that works.
Okay. Christian, in terms of this idea of scope to price, which is one of the biggest themes, and in the surveys and in the information I received from both our general audience and also from the attendees, this is one of the most mysterious things. How much should you charge for a project if you're a service provider? And a lot of that depends on scale and on the type of projects that you do. Oshyn happens to do a lot of content management projects for enterprise clients, meaning large corporate clients. And you have a unique way. How do you come up with pricing? Like, talk about that spreadsheet you have that does magic.
Yeah, I think I was saying before that I think every services company or contractor has a magic spreadsheet that they use, and the longer that you've been in this business, the more things get added to that spreadsheet, and then the more things get added to that spreadsheet, the higher your pricing is going to be. And the dichotomy between should you go with agile or go with the fixed price, that means if you're going to sell or buy agile, you don't have to try to predict and itemize everything up front and add in and calculate in all the risk and calculate in all of the potential pitfalls that you're going to have into that spreadsheet. If you're going with something that's fixed price, variable scope, or any combination of variable scope, then it's much more aligned with how software is actually built. It's much more aligned with the things that typically happen on projects. So anytime that you're trying to fix price a project for a customer, the spreadsheet is an example of what Heather was saying is a bottom up. The top down is just kind of a guess of how many people it's going to take and how many weeks it's going to take. And typically, if we're doing a fixed price bid, we'll do both of those to see how they come out. And a lot of times they'll come out not very close to each other, and you need to kind of go through the process of predicting. And that's really what it is. You're trying to predict what's going to happen 4 months from now, and it's hard and it's fraught with errors. And probably more than 75% of the time, it's wrong.
Interesting. So you're saying that anytime that you estimate, you're always wrong.
I'm always wrong.
Wow.
I've been doing it for
a long time.
10 years, and I'm always wrong.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and when you come up with that magic spreadsheet, every line item that you put on it, every number of hours that you put next to each line is wrong, and you know that. But what you're hoping is that the overall variability between each task makes up for the variability in the other tasks, so that you can overall come out not losing your shirt. And you're crossing your fingers.
Wow. So Mike from Locus, your question.
So does everyone feel the same way about estimating, that you're always wrong?
Yeah, I would say that's true. The only thing I would disagree with is often we'll do the top-down estimate, and then we'll go through the time of doing the bottom-up, and we get to the same number. So that's why often we just do the top-down, because you can lock yourself in a room for days trying to estimate out every button, every feature, and so on, and you get to a number that's pretty much the same, and because of the variability you're talking about, without much more confidence of whether you're going to be accurate or not. So I would agree that that the estimation is it's not a science, and you try and get as close as possible and hope that the items that you overestimated make up for the items that you underestimated. And then you've got to write really good assumptions into your contracts. I mean, so assumptions about everything.
What does that mean?
From how many of something you're going to make. So how many wireframes, how many visual designs. Assumptions about technology. Are you assuming certain APIs exist? Are you assuming certain technology is going to be used? Are you things like mobile devices? This is a really murky territory in terms of how many devices are you going to support, and what's the screen size, and those sorts of things. So assumptions are what is going to really save your butt at the end of the day, because if you have not put down what you're assuming, then those things are really open to interpretation. So I think.
Yeah, I'll second that as
Yeah.
well. I mean, and we do probably 70% of our work is fixed bid, fixed price. So the only thing, the only remedy left to you is get really good at writing assumptions. Get really good at drawing the box around what you're doing and what you're not doing, and making sure that that's clear, and making sure even writing it into the contract isn't enough. You need to write it into the contract, and you need to review it with the customer. The customer needs to completely understand what each assumption actually means and what that translates into what they're getting.
That's an awesome question. What was your follow-up, just out of curiosity?
Oh, I was going to ask if everybody's feeling the same way about estimating, and if you never get it right, then how are you making money?
Well, that's the magic question. Well, let's answer this question this way. Scott, you mentioned something about your experience with seeing how agencies get into an account, let's say like at an entertainment company, but then later with subsequent projects, you were mentioning the underbidding. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't recall mentioning it, but I can talk to it.
Can you talk to that a little
definitely.
bit?
Yeah, so I think there's a bit of strategy when we're bidding a project, especially if it's against other agencies. And we lose a lot of projects because people underbid us, right? And I know we're very efficient and our rates are not, they're competitive. So I know that, often when we lose one of those, it's because someone is just being smart about the business. They see an opportunity for an account and they use that first project as a foot in the door technique. So, if you can underbid someone and maybe lose a little bit of money on the first project in order to create a longer term relationship with the client, then that's not a bad strategy. We try not to do it because we want to be more transparent about our pricing. But if you think about it, once someone signs that contract on a six-figure digital development project, that's a marriage, right? And it's very hard for them to just say, okay, we're going to forfeit our deposit or all of the work we put into this so far and fire you and go somewhere else. So,
Yeah, and something I was mentioning the other day. Part of what I would like to achieve by educating customers is that there isn't that much variability between not only rates per hour of people and when you're looking across service vendors, but also their efficiency. If you hire one company and they bid a job at $10 and another company bids it at $20, you as a customer might take away, the company that bids it at $10 is really much more efficient. It must have better developers, must be more confident in their process than the company that bids it at $20. But that delta is not as great as you think. Really, the delta comes in that the company that bid it for $10, their understanding of the scope and how big the job is and what services they're providing, what they think you need. So that's really just a function of how much they've understood, how many hours they've spent on your problem and trying to come up with the solution to your problem. You're really buying two different things when you're buying from the company that bid $10 versus the company that bid $20.
So you guys are talking about some very interesting and maybe almost a bit complex for some of the sales processes. How are you guys doing so far, Orlando? Are you understanding where they're at?
Actually, Jose, I have a question.
Yes.
And Scott, we need to share our microphone. So sorry about that. So here's what I would like to do. I'm a client, mostly from print and packaging. I'm getting into digital right now. My first experience. Why do I need to understand your approach? How would you articulate to me? How would you educate me why it is so important for me to try on a new process and not do it like we've been doing it for, let's say, the last 20 years?
Go, Elias.
Well, I wanted to add on to the previous question, which I guess kind of ties into this. But if you go with a $10 guy, you can get a good deal once, and that's great, and you can get a product out, and you launch version 1, we're out, awesome, we got a sweet deal on this. And I saw this a lot at the studio side of things. So you get your version 1 product out, everyone's happy, but things are updating constantly. You can't just go with version 1, you got to iterate. And that's where the pain point really comes in, and that's where it turns out to be a sour deal, and it's a lose-lose for everybody if you go with the guy who's underbid. You'll get an aggressive developer agency, third party that's excited to get their foot in the door, and they'll burn the midnight oil for you and do a really good job to get that thing out. But then when you want to iterate, they're like, we lost our pants on this. We got to get some more money. We gotta recoup this. And then we got in a situation a bunch of times where we're stuck, and we have a lot of version 1 products out there that just sit on the shelf.
Wow, that's an interesting insight. So when you budget for a project, you should budget for the long term and all the iterations. You're not buying a washing machine, is what you're saying? You're actually
Exactly.
buying a long-term relationship. That's an amazing. So back to Tatiana's, to soften Tatiana's request a little bit, meaning, dang, it's like sell me on why the process or why should it. I think the question is one of what is it that it takes to convince a client, especially a client that might not be as experienced, to work with you versus to work with the $10 client? And what are your experiences personally in being able to close a project? And this is important for both people who are looking to buy digital services and people who are selling them. What are those things that that you should look for as a client that need to match up between you and this new marriage? And you've talked about this, Heather.
Sure. So I think that there's a couple things. One is not to get too obsessively focused on just price as a client. That's one part of the package. But it really has to be a match on a number of fronts. It should be there should be good chemistry. So, you're going to be in this project with each other for 6 months, a year, however long it is. You want to know that you actually want to work with these people, that you've got a compatible culture, work style, that sort of thing. So there should be that chemistry there. I think as a client, you should be looking for a partner with a proven track record. So does this person understand the kind of project that it is that you're doing? Now, when it comes to working with an agency, I don't think that means they necessarily have to have experience with your particular industry. So they don't have to have known exactly, we've worked with your top competitor. I'm not saying that that's important. I think what's important is that, if you're looking for a mobile product, that this person has some strong mobile pedigree and really understands that industry. So making sure that fit is there. And then I think really looking at the proposal and saying, does this partner really seem to get what it is that we're asking for? They haven't just found a way to get to the lowest dollar value, but have they really broken down our request, explained back what we're asking to us in a way that really makes sense and resonates with us? Have they just blindly kind of given us a price for what we've asked for, or have they kind of thought out of the box, maybe suggested other options, or even pushed back in some cases if appropriate? Hey, we don't actually think this is the right solution, but we would recommend this. Is there some critical thinking happening here that makes them a worthwhile partner? And then, of course, on the price and the schedule and so on, I think that some really good points are being raised about agencies that go in with this kind of loss leader. It can be fraught with danger when you work with a partner that you're like, I don't know how they got to this price. This is really cheap. You may get the bait and switch where the A team pitched you and the B team does the work because they can't afford to have the A team on your project. You may find that you thought you were going to have this development team of 10 developers, but it's really 5 working 12-hour days and making a ton of mistakes because those sorts of things might happen. So I think you want to make sure as a client that it's a mutually beneficial partnership, because if it's not and one partner feels like they're losing their shirt on it, it's not really sustainable and you're not going to get the best product out of it. So I think all of those things need to ideally align for it to really be a productive, good partnership.
Thank you so much. That's an awesome answer. Something that you mentioned is developers and team members, and you can shoot me while I'm asking questions. That's okay. Okay. No, it's all about me. No, it's not. You mentioned something very interesting about the idea of having different, collaborators, developers, creatives, etc., when you're estimating a project. Now, some folks might not have all of those things under one umbrella, like Huge does, because you're huge. What do you do, and how have you partnered with creative partners or with other outside disciplines in order to deliver projects? And Elias and then Scott.
One more time.
Do you partner with outside creative resources? How do you deliver a project for someone like Edible Schoolyard or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our specialty is development. That's what we stick to. We're a small open source dev firm. So we look to design agencies to work with, and that's where we get a lot of our business from. They'll go out, agencies will go out and find work, and we'll become their development arm. And we really like to integrate with teams. We try to be like an augmented development arm. So we're there to do whatever needs to get done in a way that doesn't burn everyone out.
Awesome. And Scott, you mentioned that you've worked with Huge and that you've also partnered.
We haven't worked with Huge
Oh,
yet.
you haven't? I'm
I
sorry.
hope to.
That you're going to in the future, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. But
You guys are sitting too far apart already.
That's
The
true.
chemistry there
Yeah.
is kind of like, what? Or you just want to see the banner, maybe. Go ahead.
That must be it. No, other large agencies, right? So some digital agencies like Huge, but also PR companies and creative agencies, right? Who may have the resources in-house, but they might not have them available, or they might need us because the project has some kind of technical component that's beyond their capabilities. So, I mean, like Elias, we're kind of at the end of the line as a production-focused studio, right? So the bigger agencies do a lot of the client management, account planning, media planning, strategy, really high-level design stuff, and across the entire campaign. whereas we're working on one project that fits into it in some way, right? So we don't do a lot of the partnership seeking. It usually comes to us.
To you, yeah.
Right.
But you have the capability of delivering the strategy and delivering the user experience.
Somewhat. Well, I'm a UX guy, and so is Joy, and that's a big part of our business. But when it comes to working with the agency partners, they tend to do a lot of the design, and we do more development.
Got
For
it.
some of those projects, they'll just give us, here's what we're trying to accomplish. We don't have any resources. You're going to do all of that. But more often than not, when we partner with larger organizations, it's for the development side.
Got it. So let's shift that then now to the question that Tatiana had earlier, a little bit of selling to someone who might not have the experience. But more importantly, let's talk about co-selling, selling together. If you were having to come in with an agency partner to sell a project from the beginning versus them handing you the requirements or the budget already, would you do that? Have you done that? And Christian, how would you approach co-selling when you've done it in the past, since you have done it?
Very similar to what Scott is saying, and Elias is saying. You need to integrate yourself with the team, and not only post-sale, but pre-sale is how you're demonstrating on how you're going to work with that partner going forward. I think customers shouldn't be afraid if there's multiple companies. I think at some point, maybe before 2005, we used to kind of white label our services, where an agency would outsource to us, and the customer wouldn't know about it. We do that some places as well. But if the customer is going to interact with people on our team, then it's very easy for the customer to just go on LinkedIn and find out which company you work for. So it's much better to be transparent, and it's much. I would encourage buyers, people who are buying digital services, to understand that there's a lot of companies out there, and smaller companies have very specific and specialized skills, and sometimes it takes multiple teams coming together to do what you want, and that's okay. In the end, what you're buying is you're buying people's time, you're buying the expertise. So it's really more about the individual people that are pulled together for your project, for your team.
So it's about the individuals, and it's better to be transparent. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
When you're selling together.
Yeah,
Awesome.
When you're selling, and I mean, obviously that translates to after after sale as well when you're doing the project.
We have a pretty important group of people here from the LA community, representing a lot of different interests, from Art Center to marketing to Jamie, who's the president of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. If any of you are interested in EO, I was a member for 2 years, and it was pretty valuable. And also on the board of AIJLA. So one of the things that I'm very interested in is the opportunity for creative and for tech to come together, and in a way, almost Huge provides that at a cultural framework within an office. Meaning, you have a creative culture, you have a tech culture, you have a strategy culture, and Huge is the mitigation. It's your one company, owned by Publicis, and you have a process.
IPG.
IPG. Did I get that wrong? I apologize. Owned by IPG. So at 14 offices worldwide. The reason I'm mentioning that is because suddenly, if I need to partner with Oshyn or with Stauffer or with Philosophy, how do you maintain the culture, or how do you bring a team under one kind of process? And it's going back to her question, like, how would you approach the issue of co-selling and co-executing when you have different interests and different principles in mind? Like, what are things that you've experienced?
Yeah, I just want to. I'll hand over the mic, but I just want to add, it's not really that hard. I mean, we've all been in this industry. If somebody's working at Huge or at Oshyn, most likely they were working at another agency before that, and they're going to work at another agency after. So we're talking similar language. We know what the deliverables are. We have a basic understanding of what the process is. We fill in the gaps, and bringing different skill sets to the table fills in those gaps. But unless you're dealing with someone that's completely new to the industry, it's the same as if you hired someone new to your team versus if you're partnering with somebody. You need to have that expectation that you're going to be working together as a partner, hand in hand, to try to meet the objectives of the customer.
So, and you're a tech guy, and you're a really nice guy. You're easy to work with.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So tech people don't bite, and they're not weird, except for Daniel Kremsa. No, I'm just kidding. He's awesome too. So Elias, anything to add to that issue of working together with, how would you describe your process and what you do? And we're doing it now. You and I are working together on a proposal. How would you describe what me and you are doing to her if she was the client and we wanted her to be our new client? And she's a lifestyle media company called Tatiana.
Tatiana.
Yeah, it does.
Let's see, how should we say this?
How would me and you sell her on our services and our capabilities as a tech partner? She doesn't understand tech. She's Russian. She's Swiss. She's Swiss. So she's very, she needs details. She needs, process. Structure.
Do I have to answer this?
Das structure. No, well, you don't.
In the language?
In any language. In Espanol.
In Espanol. I could do Danish.
There you go.
Let's see. I mean, it's a relationship. We're on a team. We're gonna have to get through this together. And what we're saying about being transparent, it's all about telling you exactly where we are at every stage, so we can make these decisions together. It's collaborative tools. It's my favorite flavors are Google Docs, awesome stuff. I should get paid by Google for how much I plug them. Jira, we're agile, so we're doing
Jira. Oshyn uses Jira. You use Jira.
Whatever the ticketing
what the hell is Jira for those of you who might know?
It's a ticketing system. It's getting tasks outside of email so they can be tracked and looked into and broken down into finer detail and prioritized and acted upon. So it's again just going back to being on the same team and working towards the same goal and having tools that enable that.
Awesome, thank you. That's a great share. As we begin getting closer to the end, and I want to make sure that people ask any questions right now, like any question, small or large. Here we go. Ben, what do you do and why are you here?
All right, so my name's Ben. I do business development for a UI and UX design agency. And what I'm wondering is how you guys internally communicate with other agencies that are outside your own if you're working on a project together.
That's a very good question. How do you put a team together with outside and inside?
Like, what's our communication flow?
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. So we're at Stauffer, we're all on Skype. And so we have these Skype chat rooms, and it's just nonstop. Like, the communication is instant, it's there. So it's a lot of interacting through Skype. It's Google Docs. We track a lot of things through that, and then it's our ticketing system, and then video conference calls and a ton of meetings.
Yeah.
Which
scheduling
we should cut
becomes
back
important.
on. We should cut back.
And
on
do you
those
do
meetings.
those meetings through Skype or do you use Google Hangouts?
We try to meet in person whenever possible. I know that I'm reading.
It's called Physical World. It's a product.
Yeah, you get a lot accomplished by meeting in person. I'm reading Rework, the 37 Signal guys book, and I'm on the section. Meetings are toxic, and I agree. You can waste a lot of time in a meeting, but as long as you try to have a strict agenda, you can accomplish a lot also by just sitting down in person and knocking things out.
That's a really great point. The more I've experienced it, the more creative you are. My practice was very creative. The more strict I was on how hardcore agendas were and timekeeping. We ran all our meetings on a clock, and I would say, okay, stop. Okay, move on to the next topic. Stop, move on. Within a 1 hour period. Now that looks like I'm a very oppressive leader in a creative culture, but the creative people loved it because there wasn't any well, we're gonna do this. It was really tight. And there's a question from this young lady right here.
I just want to add in practicality in terms of what actually, what happens. We typically, whoever owns the client relationship is going to be the one that's driving, and whoever they're talking to get data from, we will, if we're driving the client relationship, then we're asking other people, other partners, hey, can you give me this? Can you give me this for the proposal, this for the proposal? And then we put it together. And then same thing, if someone else is driving the client relationship, they're asking us for tech diagrams, for development estimations, for other things like that, and we kind of feed that in. And it's usually typically tiered like that.
So one more thing I would add is that I think what's really important is understanding roles and responsibilities at the outset. So it may be something that can be done, fairly informally if it's pretty clear, but really I think knowing that from the get-go is really important. It may need to be done more formally, even with some kind of a RACI chart, but you don't want to have those moments where you're looking at each other going, oh, I thought you were doing that. You're not doing that. We're doing that, or there's a moment where there was something that you thought was going to be produced that you need to do your job, and for instance, business requirements aren't getting handed over to you or something, and you depended on those, but you'd never sat down and talked about these are the things you're doing, these are the things I'm doing, and here are where the interdependencies are. So I think just making sure that's really clear from the outset, and then all of these collaboration tools are, finding your own whatever works for the group. But I would echo that sometimes an in-person meeting is really the best way to kind of solidify that group dynamic.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Laura. I am an information architect and UX designer. And scoping a project can be pretty daunting. And I know that one of the projects that I worked on with Jose and Christian, the way that they went about that was to only bid for the discovery at first and not the whole entire project. So I'm wondering if the rest of you do that too. What does that look like? And what are the different steps? You have discovery, design, and build, obviously.
Thank you, Laura. That's a brilliant question. So the question is, how do you deal with this? Do you do discovery to figure out the scope of the project and charge people for that? And if so, how? Scott, do you want to start with that?
So we do something called agile development, which many of you are probably familiar with. For those of you who aren't, it is basically a methodology to facilitate a more flexible scope. The way we practice it is similar to what Elias said earlier about fixed budget, flexible scope, because let's be honest, clients always have a budget, whether they tell you or not. So for as many projects as we can, we try to employ that type of methodology, and the project gets defined as we go along. So we're actually building and defining kind of simultaneously. Sometimes it's chaotic, but generally we find the result to be better. That said, some clients that we work with, because of organizational restrictions or because of partners we're working with, require a much better defined scope. So if they don't come to us with that scope in the first place, then we do require a discovery process. Sometimes, if it's a very small project, we're able to do it as part of the sales process. But for most of them, and more, because we're working on bigger projects, it's a multi-week process that we must charge for.
Thank you so much, Scott. How do you do discovery, Heather?
I would say if you can ever convince someone to pay you to do discovery without having to estimate the whole thing out, absolutely go that route, because you just don't know enough often. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, inaccuracy in estimates. You are trying to estimate something where you really have 10% of the details that you really need. So any time that you can convince them to kick off with a paid discovery and then get to estimates for subsequent stages later, absolutely. Sometimes it's also safe to even take it through design. So often saying we'll do discovery and design, because during design you're going to come up with that feature set, and you can go through a feature prioritization exercise, and then use that feature prioritization to talk together about what needs to be in that product, and say, okay, now that we've got that, here's your top features. That's X amount of dollars, and you can also help them plan out, following releases as budget frees up or as time is available. So I think. If you can get that, absolutely go for it every time. And if not, try and make the estimates for later stages ranges so that you're not as locked into we're going to do it for exactly this amount, but say, look, based on our previous experience and what we know right now, we think you're looking at a range between this and this. But we really need to go through these stages before we can commit to that.
Just breaking the project into little pieces and also giving ranges for the future pieces.
Yeah.
And as a buyer, if you're asking a vendor to give you prices for the entire thing up front without a discovery, like I said, the variability is going to be great, and probably 95 to 99% of the time it's going to be incorrect. You really
it's going to be incorrect.
It's better incorrect. Sorry, it's better for you as a buyer to do the discovery, Try to transfer the knowledge to that team about what you need to be built and how it's going to be built before they give you an actual price. And if your agency isn't, your agency should know how many meetings it's going to take for them to be able to be confident in the price. If you come to them with really detailed specs and designs, they might be able to say, yeah, okay, I just need a couple meetings to answer some questions, and then I can give you a price. But like Heather's saying, it might be that a 2-week discovery is needed. It might be that we won't give a price for the build until after the design is done. That happens a lot of times as well. And what we've come to realize as an industry, software developers, is that the closer you get to the actual build of the product, that's when your estimation accuracy goes up. Your estimation accuracy is about 100% the hour before you start building that. And every hour and day you move away from that, you're going to be less and less accurate. So that's the function of the discovery. That's the function of the design. And that's why a lot of us in the industry have come to the conclusion that really we need to be doing agile. We need to be doing the estimation right before we start building, because anything else is just varying degrees of inaccuracy.
I love it. Scott, you have something to say. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing to add from the buyer's perspective with respect to discovery, it's, as we've alluded to, it's in your interest, but one thing to make that concept more palpable maybe is that it gives you a way to try out the agency that you're considering working with before you actually invest in the whole project. So the discovery phase may be...
It's like dating.
Yeah, it may be 5% to 20% of
your
the
total budget. And
right?
you can go with another agency afterwards.
That's the key. So, one thing in buying a discovery process, make sure that whatever they're delivering is something that is going to allow you to, get better estimates from other people, right? So
brilliant.
You get to try someone out, and you get some kind of deliverable, whether it's a product requirements document, whether it's high-level wireframes that will help other people, in case you don't want to work with them, give you a better estimate as well.
It's a brilliant idea. Well, Scott, so I want to wrap up with some final thoughts and then open up to any questions that most folks would have. What's your wish for the LA community? Like, what's your ideal client look like, and what does your ideal project look like? It's Christmas time. Ask the universe for.
Well, obviously, unlimited budget and unlimited time. Unlimited knowledge.
Okay, aside from that.
Okay, so to be more realistic, I think this type of education is really critical. I don't know what it is, but as someone who's worked with clients in the Bay Area, in New York, and other places that are, have tech centers, the LA community in digital seems to be somewhat unsophisticated, right? Or
Did you just call us rubes? You elitist San Franciscan? You called us rubes.
I am from here.
Oh,
so,
sorry.
So
okay.
This is something I'm passionate about, and that's why I'm here. Is I think what Jose is doing, and the reason we're all here is because we're trying to give buyers tools, and we're trying to educate ourselves as well on how to make projects go more smoothly, right? So I think understanding digital and the ways that it differs from more traditional design projects or consulting projects, and the biggest thing, and it hasn't been said explicitly yet, is that it's a living thing most of the time, right? When you go to print or you produce a film, a commercial, a spot, it's done. You do the final cut, you ship it, and you're not going to change it. But on the web, we have this awesome potential to continually iterate on whatever we build. We're adding content to it. We're adding features to it. We're responding to data because we have analytics. We're responding to direct feedback from customers that we've interviewed. It's a long-term process, and if you can see it that way, see it as a living thing and a partnership, things are going to go much more smoothly. So I would say education is very important.
Thank you. That is brilliant what you just said, and what you just said is that the process is the product, not the website.
That's an even better way to say it. Yes.
Blew my mind.
Right, you're not buying a website. You're buying a team of people who understand process and can help you reach your goals. So defining your project in terms of your objectives and being willing to see it as a long-term iterative process, that's my ideal client, in short.
Thank you so much for that. What does Huge do for customers, and what do you need at Huge from the resource types that are here, from UX to design? What are you guys looking for, both in customers and people?
I think that I would echo the idea of partnership. So I think really engaging in that relationship as a partnership. I always get kind of an icky feeling when I hear the vendor word, because it has a very
Hello, vendor.
transactional feel about it. And
Partner, yes.
I really think that it should be a partnership, so that it's about, hey, this should be mutually beneficial for us, right? We should get to work together to produce something awesome. The agency should be able to make some money on it. The client should get something valuable at the end of the day. So looking at it in that way, where the partnership really becomes critical when you hit the bumps in the road, the unexpected things, right? Something comes up to change the direction of the product, or you hit a technical challenge or design challenge that was not anticipated, and that's when the partnership becomes important, so that you can put your heads together and say, how are we going to solve this? How do we work together to get through this? So that, for me, is really where you get the exciting ideal clients and the projects that always turn out to be the most successful as well.
Brilliant.
And then I think you'd also asked about what we're looking for.
Yeah, what do you
work
need?
with.
What does Huge need?
So Huge is extremely collaborative environment. So I'd say that when we work with partners that are helping us deliver a product, which we often do a lot in-house, but there will be times that we'll work with other partners. It's someone that's really willing to roll their sleeves up and be collaborative. We're a completely open environment. Everyone sits at desks out in the main area. So
hippies.
Yeah. So there's no, everyone goes into a room, and it doesn't matter what discipline you're from, what you bring to the table, what level you're at, you're a contributor. And so we need anyone that we work with to come with that mentality, with that attitude, and say, I might be, a project manager can give feedback on designs. A tech person can talk about UX, and everyone's feedback is really valid, and it's also just about getting to a really great product. So we talk about not being precious about things too. So you may have this wireframe or visual design or project plan or whatever it may be that you slaved over and you think is the awesomest ever. But if someone comes with some valid feedback and says, hey, I don't, what about this or what about that? Not holding those things so precious that you can't kind of give them up to let something evolve and get better. So I think those are the things that we find work really well in our partnerships.
So collaborative, and it sounds like authenticity is important in that, you need to be able to listen while at the same time admit your mistakes and faults, because you'll make many in the process. It really does require a different type of person to work in this environment.
Yeah.
Wow, pretty amazing. Thank you so much. Elias, how would a creative firm like, let's say, Orlando and the Bold Collective, if they had a project lead or if they have development that they need done for one of their clients, what's the best way to reach out to you and to do something, begin the conversation about partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a partnership. So give us a call, send us an email, just get something to.
Now
to
you know each
kickstart
other.
it. Yeah. You can find us. But I wanted to say a little. We've been talking about agile, which is definitely the way to go. But I'm just feeling bad listening to Scott and Heather talk about vendors, and the whole thing of like putting a plan in place with waterfall, which just means like you're sitting in an office and put the whole year plan together, lob it over to a vendor, and then expect them to execute on it.
Dance, monkey, dance.
Exactly. And then you know what? You forgot to give them the keys, but that's their problem.
Right.
And they got to figure it out.
That attitude is a bad attitude, obviously, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just not going to work. You got to break this stuff down into smaller chunks and
you have to be willing to do the process with the customer, with the partner,
Yep.
even if you already have done it internally, so that they can understand it and internalize it. So one of the things that we get, or I see often as an executive, especially in entertainment, because they get a little bit shorter in the attention span, and they might have done a lot of this process and actually used it to delay execution with their higher ups. So now when you come in as a vendor and you say, well, we need to define your users again, they're like, nah, we got our users defined. So it's not about doing it again, it's about simply them doing it with you so that they feel part of it. They're enrolled in it.
Yep. No us and them. It's
right. No us and them.
We're all on the same team.
Thank you for sharing that, Christian. What the hell is Siteport? There's a huge banner behind you, and how does it relate to Oshyn and to what this all conversation is about? What is Siteport?
Okay, Siteport is a product that Oshyn created, and it's something that helps. We're in the web content management space, and we've been building websites, and most of the times that includes implementing some kind of a web content management system to manage the web assets for the website. And what's happened, what we've found is happening is customers are maybe 8 years ago, customers were moving from a static website or a dynamic custom coded website to some kind of a content management system. And now they're probably moving, when they're moving from a content management system that they've grown out of to a new content management system. So what Siteport does is it allows a customer to move all of their assets and take their intellectual property from their old content management system to their new content management system.
So I have a video and content site. I want to port it to a new platform. I can do that using Siteport. And anyone huge can come to you and say, we would like to use Siteport to migrate a large client.
Correct. Yeah. And the value proposition is, when you start building a website and you're moving from an existing website and you get to the point where you need to move your content over, it's typically one of the parts of this process of website development that is underappreciated and underscoped from the very beginning.
Content is.
And content is moving.
Biggest mistake I see every single time. Content gets left out.
Your services partner will tell you that with confidence after discovery that they can finish the development and the build out of the website by a certain date, but they will typically not be able to tell you when the content will be able to be put into that new system, because there's so many variables. How much of it are you going to rewrite? How much of it are you going to keep, throw away? How it's going to fit in,
other panel.
How it's going to fit into the new system.
It's a whole other panel.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
But yeah.
So it's typically one of the things that delays your launch in a website.
It's usually content. Yeah. Got it.
Many
So
times.
that's what Siteport is. It automates the process and it helps you do it with moving is easy is what it says up there. One final question from you guys. Make it good. What's a question that we didn't answer? Well, from the CEO of Oshyn and from Rudy. Okay, I'm going to cheat. We're going to do two. Nick, go.
All right. I have a question about, we talked a lot about money and deliverables. I have a question about how to not be a people pleaser in terms of time scope. Oftentimes, we'll work with development firms that are downstream from us, and we try to, push the client to not have infinite timeline or give them as much time as they can. And other times we work with people upstream, and they're like, oh, they can get it done in a day. It's cool. How do you guys strategize to avoid that, basically?
Great question. Developers are usually technical people, and they want to not necessarily please you, but they know they can do it in a day. So you're actually challenging them. Here's what I want to do. And they're like, I could do that in my sleep. So they're going to answer the question from that point of view. So you always take it with a grain of salt, and you then have to figure out, the 4 times, multiply that times 4, and that's how much time it's really going to take. But how do we deal with it?
Everybody, in my experience, everybody on the delivery team is going to be optimistic and positive and wants to do a great job for the customer. And they will try their best, and that means working late, working through lunch, and to get it done. So in my experience, what it takes is you have to have that person like Elias and Heather that are the project manager that are comfortable having the hard conversation with the customer and saying no in the most diplomatic and nicest way, and framing it in such a way that it's the best thing for the customer, because it is the best thing for the customer. If you ask us to do this and we work super late and you burn out the team, like Scott was saying and Elias was saying, you're not going to have that team 4 months from now if you keep burning us out. Or if you ask us to do it, there's going to be cost implications to that. So you have to find somebody who's going to be able to have those conversations, hard conversations, not afraid of doing it.
A producer.
And not afraid of doing it as early as possible.
Yeah. So that's a really good. The first hire I made when I was growing my small boutique agency was a producer. That was the first person I hired, hardcore, full-time employee. So that helped me a lot.
That's actually one of the when we're interviewing the producer and project manager types, one of our questions is, tell us what the hardest conversation you've had to have with a client is. Brilliant. And that will give us an idea of how willing they are and how many times they've gone through the fire.
creative people, we're genteel souls. I can't do confrontations very easily, or then you do them really erratically. So having somebody who does it for you is much better.
Back to
Who are you?
my name is Rudy Manning. I'm with Pastilla, a design agency in Pasadena. Back to estimating, has anybody used a tier system or a range system to provide a initial, bid for a client when they just want to get down to how much is this agency going to cost?
Tiered pricing.
Well, do you mean tiered pricing or just providing ranges?
Both. So tier meaning, okay, we could do, X amount for, with tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Each tier would have a different.
So it's Chinese menu. Here, there's a number of features for this much. This number
got
for
it.
this.
Or a range. If the scope is just really vague, you say, look, based on, sort of this basic scope that you're giving us, we could do it from this to this amount. But after discovery is when we can really nail down a number after we have that finished.
So we always start with a ballpark estimate before we get to, providing a proposal or an SOW. The more information we get up front, the tighter that range is. But initially it's sort of a pre-qualification. It's just, I'm sure we all do.
Magnitude of scale. Is it $50,000 or is it 500,000? And they'll tell you, yeah, it's not 100 and it's not 250. That's
exactly.
Your range.
Yeah.
That's
so
what I ask it that way.
That's the starting point, right? Yeah. And then the better we can define the scope, then the tighter the range gets. But generally, we're providing an estimate or a range on all of our agile projects.
Yeah.
So that's one part of your question. The other is whether or not we do a tiered approach. I use the term phases because that's what most of the clients ask for. Is dependent on their procurement process and whether or not that's how they see their project. Yeah. So if the client's asking like, okay, here's phase 1, here's phase 2, here's phase 3, then my proposal is going to.
But they might be scared about their budget allocation, and they say, "Give me the whole thing now, so that we can get the contract through and priced and
yeah."
And
people have different requirements, and we try to be flexible to them as long as it's not going to have too big of a, compromising effect on our own process.
Yeah. And it goes back to what Heather said, relationship with that person that you're actually building the estimate with. They are a partner in the process of building the estimate, so you have to enroll them. The last question from Oshyn CEO Diego Rebosio.
Hi, I'm Diego. So this is a question for any or all of you. If you were a client, how would you go about finding a digital agency, and which one would you pick, and what process would you go about to find who the best vendor is?
Wow, that's a hard question. Lead generation, and how do you pick them?
Of course, it's going to be huge. Right? I think it goes back to a lot of the similar things I answered earlier in terms of not just picking on price, but those other criteria. So really, does this agency have the right kind of experience and background? Have they shown excellence in the type of project that you're proposing? You want to look at it across the board too, like whether dig into whether they've done that full cycle. So they may have done the design portion, but if they didn't do the technical portion, is that because they don't have that skill set or whatnot? If there's a certain technology you're using, it's imperative that partner knows that technology and has experience. The chemistry fit is really important as well. Are these people that you are going to really enjoy working with? And then through the negotiations, how does that go when you're negotiating price and schedule and budget? Is that a painful process where every conversation is difficult, or are you able to have a good conversation where you're collaborating and coming to mutual understanding? Because that's going to be a good indication of when you do hit difficult conversations in the future, how they're going to go, and you want to make sure that's the person that you can easily engage in those conversations. So those would be some of the key things.
Those are brilliant. That's awesome. One sentence, Scott. Really brief.
Just to go.
People need to get back to work, and some of us are.
Up one level in the funnel, you're not going to find them on Google, right? So if you don't have someone to give you a reference or people to talk to, then chances are you're not ready to find a good partner, and you have to educate yourself.
So the referrals are really the number one way of people finding, hey, what agency did you use?
Yeah,
help.
We've had clients come to us and say, yeah, we're talking to this 2-person agency, and we're talking to Blitz and Digitaria and Saatchi and you guys and these other people. If you're taking that shotgun approach, you're talking to more than half of those agencies are not even going to be remotely in your budget range. So
Back to EO, when I was a member, one of the forum members with me, he was the founder of Riot Games that does League of Legends, and he's like, dude, I need to do a website. Do I recommend? I actually recommended at the time Schematic, which is called Possible Worldwide now.
Thanks a lot.
I didn't know you, dude. I didn't know you. And he's a partner in EO. I can't fuck up the referral, so I refer him to the biggest agency in LA, and they fucked it up. But it's okay. They saved it. The relationship matters. Okay. So one sentence, Elias. How would you pick yourself before you wreck yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely word of mouth and references and track record.
So the reputation of what you've done, people knowing about it. Educating the community, things like this. What's your philosophical approach to that, Christian?
Yeah, I mean, I concur with what everybody's saying, but one analogy that we talk about internally is how would you hire somebody to do brain surgery on you? If it's that important, you need to educate yourself. You need to do research. You need to get referrals. The best way is know somebody that has done it and has had good success. This is a trust business. When the shit hits the fan, you need to have somebody that you can trust, that you believe is telling you the truth, that is not afraid to tell you the truth, and you need to act as a buyer in a way that doesn't make your partner not want to tell you the truth. Like if the partner is afraid of you being irate, then they're going to be more reluctant to tell you the truth as early as possible, and that is a detriment to you.
Yeah.
You got to find somebody you trust, just like you got to find a brain surgeon that you trust. And the way that you do that is to educate yourself and get talk to other people.
And I'll add to wrap that up. Do you want to say something? I do. There you go.
Thank you.
Go.
So I think in order to answer my own question I asked earlier.
Was your question answered?
Kind of. I wanna distract it to it. Like I really want to get to the bottom of it, right? So one thing that I walked away with today is it is a partnership. So anybody who is a client who comes from the print packaging industry and is moving into digital, I have to understand it's a partnership. I'm in it for the long haul. It's not just about the product. I really have to establish.
It's not about the project, no.
Yeah, it's real. I really have to establish a relationship because it's a living thing. It's a living product that continuously evolves. One thing that really worked for me was your analogy, Christian, that you had in the past where you said, you know what, the reason why it's so hard to have a fixed price is because we actually don't know what we're building into. We don't know yet. We're discovering as we go along. So that was very valuable to hear for me, being from a print and packaging background. And I think I really like the culture that's being created through the digital economy. It seems to make everybody more genuine, authentic, transparent, and we all seem to start out with a new kind of platform that may have a bigger societal impact, which is what I'm always interested in.
It's going to change the world. Well, with that really amazing positive thought, I want to thank our panelists. Big hand of applause for them. Thursday morning.